It was about 8:45 in the morning, and I had just come to the conclusion that there was not going to be any news this morning.
Yeah, I was the business editor at the time. Marty was a business reporter at the time. We both had reported on both business, economics, and politics and news in general.
Put everything under the table. I put it away in my notebooks because I decided there was really no story here. And then the chandeliers began to tinkle, and there was suddenly an enormous boom from what seemed to me back toward the kitchen behind the ballroom. And I ran across the street to find a payphone, and there was a bank of payphones in the World Financial Center. Then I called my wife. I woke her up. It was a little bit before 6 a.m. in Seattle.
He was kind of shouting. He was like, I was in a building, and it blew up. And I said, get the hell out of there. This is terrorism.
Then there was another kind of explosion outside. Everybody kind of dropped their phones and ran out to see what was going on. And then I ran out, and then I saw the second tower had been hit.
Well, there was that period of time when I had talked to him and the tower had gone down and I didn't know where he was. So I was really concerned that he didn't get out of that blast zone.
I was maybe a mile away at the time. It just kind of shimmered, and then it was just a pile of dust. I kept walking, and finally I got to my brother's office.
And, sorry. So he called me, and he said he was fine. He wasn't there anymore, but he needed me to call his brother to let him into his village real estate office.
And finally, around 6 o'clock, we decided it was safe to go back into the subways and headed back uptown to stay with my brother. The next morning, I woke up pretty early, probably about 4 a.m. And when it got light, I walked out to the park where I could see the smoke still pouring out of the World Trade Center. And I decided to start making my way home. And I knew, of course, all the airports were shut down. There were no airplanes flying anywhere for the foreseeable future. But I could take a train to New Jersey and start kind of making my way home.
I never thought oh no, don't come home, stay a couple days and do this story. That was never my thought process. It was always, of course you're coming home. What became very clear was he wasn't going to be home for a while because there was no way to travel. By the time the next morning, you couldn't even get a train ticket out of New York.
I felt if I stayed in New York, I was going to be there for weeks, if not months. That this was such a huge disaster, such a huge story, that I would almost never be able to escape it. And I felt that was too long to leave my wife and young children alone.
As nerve-wracking as the whole thing was, there's a certain professional responsibility that reporters did have at the moment, and to figure out what the story was and what they needed to cover. Marty's decision was a good decision. I mean, I certainly can't criticize somebody for wanting to get away from there. It was scary as hell.
I realized then that it was a sensitive decision more than I think I initially thought.
I spoke on a couple of occasions about my experiences on 9/11 and my belief that as a reporter and as a person, you have to make decisions in life that you have to live with, decisions that are right for you. And sometimes nobody's going to tell you what to do. And I made my own decision, and it was one that I am comfortable with. When I left New York, I felt like, well, one thing I can do is I can pick up my notebook again and my camera, and I can report on what I'm experiencing. And there's a story in 9/11 that's bigger than just the World Trade Center. There's a story of how this whole country reacted in that time. So all the way back on my travels from New Jersey to Cleveland, to the 30-hour train ride from Chicago. I talked to dozens of people about their experience and what this time meant to them. And I felt like I had a story to tell. And when I came back, I did tell that story in an essay that I wrote. And it's actually one of the stories that I'm proudest of.
Marty's a professional. Marty really knows how to put together a story, and he knows how to put together a human story. And Marty put together lots of human stories after being at the event. After being at Ground Zero, Marty was able to really connect with people, probably in a much more personal way than somebody who hadn't been there.
An event like this really puts things in perspective. You feel so lucky to be alive and so lucky to have a family that loves you and you love them. And you know that when you see and experience a disaster like this, that's what really matters in life. Your friends, your family, the love that you have. Work is just a part of it, but it's not your whole life.